Welcome to Pacific Mystery School, the heart of the Western mystery tradition. And today we are beginning a contemplation of the Hierophant, Major Arcana key number 5, the Hierophant. And this is really only the briefest introduction, and that really holds true with all of these cards. And sometimes you've heard me talk about some of these cards for an hour and a half, one card. But the truth is, you could write volumes about any one of these cards because each one is so powerful. It's so powerful, and there's so much happening. What we are doing, what these cards allow us to do, is to receive energies from the field of consciousness, the fullness of the field of consciousness and the collective unconscious, as Jung would say. To receive is the meaning of the word Kabbalah. This is a Kabbalistic tarot deck, Tarot of the Spirit, based on the Tree of Life. That's what it means. And created as a mechanism to allow us to receive energies. Kabbalah is the energy or the wisdom that we receive, that can come through us. You can't teach that. You can't teach that to anybody. You can give guideposts. You can put everything in a grid to begin to show direction, but you can't teach anybody the deep information. Anybody has to receive that deep information and internalize it. Kabbalah, which is this bountiful, what an understatement, universal wisdom and energy, is like a river that flows through the Tree of Life. The soul is like a river. And in the fool's journey or the hero's journey through the Tree of Life, the soul, our own soul, like a river, flows through each archetypal phase of growth. As we have individuated from the wholeness, become an individual, and it really has two levels of meaning, because say the word individual means both one who divides out of or from, and it also means you can't be divided from. Individual. You know what I mean by that? Can you follow it? It's a little bit strange, but both are true at the same time. We are part of a gigantic, gigantic understatement, energy field, the energy field of the cosmos. And we also have an individual, unique, we carry a unique part of that, each of us. And that becomes part of what I think of as the adventure of the universe, discovering its own future and its own possibilities through every one of us. This is all about self-realization. And who is the self? What is the self? Upanishads say, the self is the ear of the ear, the eye of the eye. It's a very deep inner space. And now we're talking about self with a capital S. Who is that? Who? Who is that? Okay, and that's where there's a place where we merge with all that is, all that has been, and all that ever shall be. We are now exploring facets of this self, facets of ourselves. And this is not necessarily at all a linear experience, but we're looking at facet by facet. And this is like, just imagine that what we're doing right now is we are shining up a particular facet and looking in, as if we're looking into this amazing crystal. Okay, so we'll shine up that facet and we'll look in and we'll see something. And today we're shining up the facet of the Hierophant like a window that we are looking through. Hierophant, well, before I say that about Hierophant, let me say that on this journey that we're on, which you could think of as the fool's journey or the hero's journey or the heroine's journey or whatever you want to call it, our soul is going through each archetypal phase of growth, and what we are discovering is a confluence of energies that go back to the beginning and all the way to the end, as if there were a beginning and end. And that's why words start to fail us. And as I try to explain things that I feel or I sense or I have experienced, it doesn't necessarily fall into the category of the words available to our species, which also is a reason we are changing our language. Hierophant means sacred appearance. Hiero means sacred, and font means appearance, like a phantasm. The Hierophant is the teacher who shows how things are interconnected, quote, nailed together or linked. The Hebrew letter on the card on the Hierophant is Vav, and it means nail. And they say, well, that's the nail that nails spirit to matter, that connects all four worlds or all five worlds, all four elements or all five elements. I'll come back to that. And then creates this whole spinning energy that spins out world after world after world, linking everything together and also nailing it down for us so that we can see it, so that we can experience it. And we're asking these questions inside it. What is the sacred vision? What is the sacred voice? And all of these things are appearing to us, the Hierophant sacred appearances, and then we're asking questions inside of that. We're asking what links things together, what links things together culturally, what creates meaning, what links the facets of our own experience. And all this takes us back to the Hierophant, the sacred teacher, the sacred teachings. We're asking, what do we contain in the river of our own being? What will we turn to solve our morality problems and heal the fragmentation that we experience on this planet? And we're asking ourselves in such deep ways right now, what do we contain inside of ourselves? What's our heritage? What's our religion, our ethnicity, our culture, our language? Can we turn to those things? Are those things going to help us? In stable societies or traditional societies, the whole, which is the context of everything, is understood, and how we fit into it is understood, and how it fits into us is understood. We do not live in a traditional society where everything is passed along. We live in a multi-cultural, multi-everything society, and so we have these really deep questions before us right now. And the questions are, who are we really? Who am I? Where do I fit? Because it's not clearly spelled out. We're not clearly stepping into these roles. We embody a mix of realities and a mix of traditions, and there are many discontinuities, and there's a lot of dissonance everywhere. And so by whose authority? Where does the voice come from? This comes to storytelling. By whose authority does something remain in place? Really? Who are you to say? You know what I mean? So there are different feelings even about the cosmos and cosmic law even, and what that even means, and wars going on all over the planet based on all of it, that are based on all these divisions. Okay, so let me just back up a tiny bit right now and talk about, just for a minute, this path that we've been on. We're at the Hierophant. That's key 5, right? So that implies that we have just been looking at the Fool, the Magus, the Priestess, the Empress, and the Emperor. Those are the ones that come before, right? Okay, so very briefly, I'm just going to define those and kind of lead up to where we are. So the Fool is, I'm going to just pick one thing out that just pops out. So the Fool is the field of potential energies and forces, and maybe forms, but it's like a field of potential. The 0. 1, the Magus, is the potential for concentrated substance. Something can happen here, something can emerge out of this, and it's going to get concentrated into a 1. The Priestess has to do with the story that you or the cosmos wants to tell or create or manifest. And that's where you get to do your part in terms of creating an episode in the telenovela or something like that, in the grand enterprise of all of it. Here's your episode. Each one gets an episode, and the Priestess points to the Akashic records. She's holding the scroll of the Akashic records in her hands. She points to your name in the Book of Life, and she says, okay, are you up for it? Are you up for the greatness that you can step into, the greatness of your moment, and why you are here as an individual? Here we go. That's the Priestess. And then the Empress is a combination of potential forces and forms. And what she is about is creating or manifesting new forms in the field. She's a birther. She's a creator. She's going to bring in all of the new forms. So the Priestess is the potential for those forms to arise and pointing. And then here comes the Empress. That's your creativity, right? Your creativity arising. I'm only picking just a couple of ideas out of each one of these because there's so much more involved than I'm saying right now. Then here comes the Emperor. And the Emperor is where we begin to enter information, this inner information that is coming to us, into structures and codes so that we can start to understand it better. And we enter it into you might call it an intelligent energy field. And that's where the grids could come up. We put it in the grid, and then our vision, inner and outer, before and behind, begins to increase tremendously. And we begin to understand ourselves better from our origin into what we're doing here, and then how we can create. I'm not sure that any of what I just said, I don't know how much sense it makes, but these are ways of us trying to understand who we are and what we're doing. And then we get to the Hierophant, the triumphant eternal intelligence. That's what the Hierophant is called. Let me just run through, while we're on a quick review, the intelligences of the other first cards in the major arcana. The 0, which is the Fool, is called the fiery intelligence. Fiery. It's also called scintillating intelligence. But let's stick with fiery right now. It's a fiery intelligence. Number 1, the Magus, is called the transparent intelligence. The Magus can see into other realms and then draw in that energy, draw down that energy. The Magus is the knower of all things, potentially. The Priestess, number 2, she's called the uniting intelligence, uniting above and below and dark and light. She unites spirit and matter. The Empress, number 3, is called the illuminating intelligence. That's all about creation. She's all about creation. But before creation comes into place, things are illuminated and they draw us in that way. And then we're going to create out of that. So she illuminates where we're moving, where we're headed. Then the Emperor is called the constituting intelligence. And that's how we're going to formulate things and put things together. Then we come to yet another archetype, major archetype, the Hierophant, the triumphant, eternal intelligence. So as we move through these intelligences, we move from zero, the power of zero, which is detachment from outcome, into the power of one, the Magus, focused attention, into the power of the Priestess, two, which is memory, remembering who we are. Then we move into the power of three, the Empress, where we start understanding the laws of nature. That's the illuminating intelligence. We understand how it all works, how it all fits. And then in the four, the Emperor, we begin to constitute it. We begin to put it into patterns that we can then work with. We ourselves, we're constitutors, and we're co-creators of this universe. We are universe, co-creating synergistically. And then, as we move into the power of the Hierophant, we move into the power of linking and interconnecting. Everything becomes interconnected, and we see how it is all interconnected. We begin to see that the whole can't really be divided. It's a myth that it could be divided. The Hierophant spins together, if you will, the 5 elements. So the 4 elements that we're really familiar with would be fire, water, air, and earth. And the fire is the spirit, water, emotions, heart, air/wind is consciousness and the intellect. And then the 4th element is the body. Basically, it's the body of manifestation, earth. And then the 5th element is, in a certain sense, surrounds and permeates the whole thing. And the 5th element has been called the Akasha, or the ether, and it could be called fiery air. It is a substance that is not a substance, that is inside and around everything. But it contains all of this stuff. All of this stuff would be the potential, like it's a the memory of all that has been, is, and ever shall be, is contained in that Akashic field. And I call that, myself, I call it, well, in science now they're starting to call it the field, because it's recognized that there's a field there. I call it, in visionary cosmology, I call it the pan-original field. Pan-original means, pan means all, and original just means originating. So it's the all-originating field from which all emerges, all things, all stuff, emerges and then returns.
Could it be the collective consciousness?
And it can contain, you could call it the collective consciousness. So if you want to go back in the 4 elements, the life force energy, ubiquitous life force energy throughout the field. The potential for feeling, the field contains desire and emotions. Okay, I can't go into that right now.
Is it that 99.9% that's in all of us?
Oh, is it the 99.9% that's in all of us? The space.
The space.
Yes. In the space. It is in the space. It permeates the space. Right. And is the universe imbued with emotion? Does the bird have feelings? Does the bird desire company? Right now we have a raven who's sitting here calling us. This bird wants to connect with us. And this bird, I can tell you already, because I know this bird. And this bird has a deep feeling that if I wanted to anthropomorphize it, that means put human emotions on it. I would say that that bird is my friend and likes me and loves me. And I actually know that that bird likes me and comes to visit. Okay, so does nature, does the cosmos have emotion? Oh boy, I'm going to get off the track here. Okay, the third one is consciousness.
Yeah.
That's the air, okay, permeating the space. Is, oh guys, I've got the potential today to be way off track. Okay, but look, I'm serious about this, okay? The Greeks argued, this is ancient Greece, this is 500 BC. They were, the famous Greek philosophers were arguing, what is the key element of the universe? And they argued, is it the atom? They already were thinking about that. Is it fire? Is it water? What's the key element that permeates everything? Okay, and I am here to tell you, and I would like to be in that discussion with them because, you know, it was a worthwhile and interesting discussion. I think that the universe contains a lot of things at the very elemental level, and I believe that one of them is consciousness. The table is, there is consciousness in the atoms that create the altar. Okay, I can't go into this too much more, but all of this is contained in the Hierophant. Then what happens? It manifests in the world of light and air and sound and color. And we can identify individuals, you know, and here comes the baby, born into a sudden awakening. Well, it may not be sudden. For some babies it's sudden, for others it takes a little while. But, you know, born into this world of awakening, you know, okay, so here we are. So those are the four elements. But those four elements, they don't exist separately. They can't exist separately. They have to be bound together somehow. They all work together. So that brings in that mysterious fifth element that people have been trying to identify and understand and explain for thousands of years, you know, and have put different names on it, like Akasha or ether or collective unconscious, or those are all aspects, whatever that means. Okay, so those are the five elements. This, when we get to this fifth key, this is I'm talking about the Hierophant. It's definitely a major doorway. It can move in either direction. It's a doorway in and a doorway out.
So it being the fifth key, is the Hierophant then related to the fifth element?
Yes,
The
because it's the
connection
first.
making?
It's yes, because the fifth element is now becomes predominantly recognized. You know, it's recognized, and once you have five, you have the fifth element recognized. Okay, so also I want to say that the power of the Hierophant is the voice. The voice. At the Hierophant, we heed the call. We hear the voice. What is the voice calling us to? It's calling us to heal, make whole, the spirit, the heart, the mind, the body, make whole. Okay, so maybe what part of it is, I'm making this up, but maybe part of it is harnessing that energy field, harnessing the energy field, and working with the energy field that links and binds everything together, which is really, in some ways, we can't name it. Every time we try to name it, it sounds stupider and stupider. but there it is. I mean, we're trying to work with it. Okay, so it is, in a sense, it is a call to bliss, because because we can bring all that together. We can open that doorway. We can move through that doorway. It also has something to do with like rising power. Okay, I don't want to go too much into this, but like Kundalini energy, when you start to bring all these things together, and then the energy starts to rise, recognize itself, move toward itself. I don't know what it is, and it just opens. Okay, so and we can go there. We're going to go there willingly or unwillingly. I mean, sometimes we're going to go there unwillingly through a very bad situation, such what seems bad, like we have a horrible thing that happens, like a near-death experience, and it actually pulls us in the end closer toward bliss, or the understanding of this, the amazing possibilities that exist for us that we're asleep to most of the time. You know, it's an awakening, right? Okay, can't go into that anymore right now either. Okay, so, but we can also awaken ourselves in other ways, and people know this. We can awaken ourselves through prayer, meditation, chanting, dancing, being in nature, tracking tigers. I don't know. There are so many ways that we can awaken through things that happen, and we can start training ourselves in those awakening ways of doing things. Okay, we enter into a place of where we perceive something that feels like a spiritual spark, spiritual flame, the cosmic heat, the sun, the kundalini, the chi. There's another one, chi. Akasha, the ether, electric energy, light, cosmic light. We have so many ways of describing this field. We can enter through the heart, through our deepest and greatest love. But here's a catch. I'm not going to go any deeper into this, but I'm just going to say, I'll ask a question and you can think about it later. How did your greatest and deepest love become your greatest and deepest wound? Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Okay, because all of these things are all held in this sphere, and all of these kinds of things, like going from greatest love to greatest wound, and experiencing, if we experience that, consciously, it can actually catapult us to a higher level of consciousness. If we allow ourselves to receive what wants to happen out of that and move forward, but we're going to have to get out of our sense of victimization in order to grow. So we have all these ways of getting through that. All of our spiritual practices and things can help us move through, and that's part of what we learn in this place of the Hierophant and the fives. So the Hierophant is becomes the quintessential shamanic journey. The quintessential shamanic journey is a journey of death and dismemberment. So let's say the example would be, you don't become a shaman. Nobody becomes a shaman by really just going to shaman school. What you have to do is to become a deep a real shaman. This is where language fails, to become a real shaman or to become a real Hierophant, or whatever. Doing the inner work is required, and a lot of the inner work is going to have to do with being devoured by the spirits of death and dismemberment, and being eaten by those spirits, and being torn apart, and being cut down, and being reduced to a place where we may feel like we're not going to come back. And then when the great ones, like say a shamanic version would be the mother of prey, the mother of all birds of prey. That would be a shamanic image. The mother of all birds of prey is watching over, she's the one who throws you out to the devouring birds to be devoured and to be dismembered. But when you've had enough, she's watching over you, right? When you've had enough, and when she thinks you get it, she pulls you out and begins to reassemble you, so you now remember what it's like to be devoured, and you remember what it's like to be torn asunder. And once you remember that, you begin your path into becoming truly whole. To heal is to be whole. And the Hierophant is the Hierophant in the exalted form is a true healer and a true, quote, I'm going to call it minister, which means to serve, a true servant. So the being the healer, being the shaman, being the minister, being the one who serves in that capacity. The true and deep one is the one who truly and deeply understands, which you can follow this, I know. It has nothing to do with the shingle outside or the ego. It has nothing to do with that. That would be the unexalted version of the Hierophant. That's the Hierophant reversed. Somebody who's in it for the power or whatever you want to call it. I don't even want to go there right now because I'm not talking about that kind of archetype. I'm talking about the true and deep and real aspects of the Hierophant and what the Hierophant really represents. Okay, so the Hierophant is this activation of this energy, this chi, on a deep sensate level, deep meditation like this, going into the place of the silence, going into the depths, and finding this place, finding absolution in a certain sense in this place, and opening this path to bliss. And the Hierophant can then help us to find the way. And the part in ourselves that's the Hierophant can we can help ourselves find the way by contacting or moving into or trying on or whatever you want to call it, that archetypal experience inside our own selves. We become the Hierophant. So we can enter into the Hierophant energy through the heart, especially even through a broken heart. We can also enter into this energy through a broken mind. When our mind has been veiled from something where we can't see, where we can't understand, and what can wind up happening with us is we begin to get, if we go into that silence, that place, that deep place, we can begin to find the inner sight that isn't available to us. Well, let me put it this way. It would be harder for that to be available to us if in our despair we're surfing the net on our cell phone because we're trying to escape. Do you know what I mean? And we might find something, but if we go into that deep inner place of silence, it's probably going to be a lot more expedient in the path to heal our mind. We're going to tap that deep, deep root of consciousness. Part of what happens in the Hierophant's about the voice. And as I'm trying to talk about this, I feel my voice going. The Hierophant is about the voice and is about listening for the voice. The still, small voice that comes through the silence. The silence. It's hard to hear it in the noise. It's hard to hear it through the noise. And it's hard to identify. Sometimes, but this is guidance. This is cosmic guidance that is coming to us. And sometimes it comes in pictures, in visions. The vision in the voice. Sometimes we can actually watch it like a movie. Trust this. I want to say trust it. Trust your consciousness. Trust the direction it's leading you in. Trust your own lucidity. Trust your own imagination. Trust how it comes. I'm still talking about the mind and how these energies impact our mind and our consciousness. Another way that we can enter into these energies, by the way, is, I was talking about meditation, and all of these other things, is with sound. By using sound, like you could use rattles, or you could use, I think I mentioned chanting before, but you can also enter into it through sound.
Well, the bowl that you do.
The bowl, the Tibetan bowls, that can take us into that place. The sound can take us into the silence. Okay, and then with the body, the manifest body, we can emit then the vision and the voice. We can move this pure energy, this energy through our body. We can create openings with our body, with our hands, for example. Our will, in some ways, is the key, but it's kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. It's a will to want to receive, and it's a will to want to transcend dysfunction or victimization. What is the way through? What is the way out? Okay, another thing I want to say about the Hierophant, I want to talk about the position of the Hierophant on the tree of life. The Hierophant connects the sphere number 2 with sphere number 4. The sphere number 2 is the sphere of desire and attraction and wanting to become, wanting something. And each of us has different desires, different wants, but those desires and wants that we have are going to create our whole world. You see how that happens if we follow them? Okay, so the 4 is the created world. The 4 is the constituted world. The 4 is the world now understood in the grid, so to speak, understanding the grid and how that works and putting our world together in a way that we've really got to constitute it. So, as we know, the Hierophant is spiritual energy, spiritual teaching, spiritual leadership, and all that. So even though the Hierophant, the astrology for the Hierophant is Taurus, that's the earth. That's earth. The Hierophant is bringing the spiritual energy or channeling, becoming like a channel to bring the spiritual energy to the earth. So as an example for you to show the connection, the place the Hierophant lives on the tree of life, I got out the 2 and 4 of fire because that's the spiritual suit. So the Hierophant links the 2 and 4 of fire, for example. Links all the 2s and all the 4s. Mm-hmm. And also the fathers live in and around the 2s. So the Hierophant's going to be directly connected to that energy, the father energy. And the spirit. And that energy of that father energy or that 2 energy is right at the top of the tree of life, directly connected to the portal that is the 1. Okay? That everything comes through. It's the beginning and the end, and that's where everything comes through. So I'm going to pause on that, and because I could hear a question. Wait, didn't you say we were the 1? Didn't you say all the created stuff is the 1? Yes. Also, the 1 also represents an opening or a portal. Okay, your question. Oh, does that mean, am I a portal? Am I an opening to the other world, to other worlds? Oh, what a concept. Let's think about that. Probably so. Okay, so it's like these openings, these portals. It's absolutely amazing. Okay, so the Hierophant also, so connecting the 2 and the 4s. I'm going to come back to the fire in just a second, but I want to say the Hierophant is one of the paths that crosses the abyss. Okay, on the tree of life. Okay, so crossing the abyss moves all of these energies we're talking about from the unmanifest into the manifest. Once it crosses the abyss, it becomes manifest. The paths that cross the abyss, so these are going to be key paths, would be the Hierophant, the Emperor, the Priestess, the Lovers, and the Chariot. Okay, the Hierophant lives on the Pillar of Mercy, which is very interesting, straight across from the Chariot, who is on the Pillar of Judgment. Judgment and mercy stand directly across from each other. And both the Chariot and the Hierophant and the Chariot, have to do with leaps in consciousness. And we are going to talk about the chariot later.
Say that one. Both
The Hierophant and the chariot have to do with leap in consciousness. And I would say, both of them, the chariot, like get in your vehicle, right? Well, I don't really like the idea of the body as a vehicle exactly. I think the body is living universe, but I have said elsewhere the body is a vehicle, But anyway, it is a vehicle for this space we're talking about, this akasha, this ether. It's also it also is living universe, By the way, living wild universe. Domestication is a veil. Okay, we are actually wild universe. We have more power, more energy, more happening than we think. Okay, I'm going to get away from that right now and go back to the Hierophant connecting the 2 and 4 of fire as an example. Because for me, the 2 of fire, I call it convergence in the Tarot of the Spirit. And only in the last 2 years, I have come to understand that card as a very central vow card. Vow, like making vows. It's got a ring in the middle, like a wedding ring, and it's the place of the marriage of fire and water. Also, the 2 of water is also a marriage card. But this one, because it's in the suit of spirit, I'm talking about the 2 of fire in the suit of spirit. It's like a spiritual vow. Okay, are you following that? Right? And then the 4 of fire is my secret name for the card, is the church name, the church card or the temple card. Because on that card, it's like we're looking down into a pyramid. It's a pyramid containing light. And it is also a place of the completed kind of constitution of spirit in a certain way, right? The
anchoring.
Yeah, I'm trying to come up with the words. It's like a place where spirit can be held, right? Anchored, like you just said. And that's why I call it the church or temple card, but it's like within our own beings. It's a place of kind of a completion and holding in the suit of fire. Okay? And it will get disrupted, but I don't want to go into that yet. But it is going to get disrupted. Actually, let's go into it. Let's talk about how it's going to get disrupted. You betcha it's going to get disrupted. It's especially entertaining when temples get disrupted. Well, how do temples get disrupted? I'll answer it, okay? And okay. They always get disrupted when the leader has sexual liaisons with all the people, many people, trusted people in the temple. I mean, that's one of the big ones, that's one of the real entertaining ones that we could talk about for a long time, But it happens all the time. Okay, so somehow the temple's going to get disrupted. Or that's also where, and then we say, so-and-so, he's not really who we thought he was, he had affairs with all these people. And, that's not right, is it? And then, I say to myself, that's not right, is it? So guess what? I'm not going back to that place. I'm not going back to that. So then the next thing that happens for me is, oops, now I'm in a crisis of faith because everything that I had hinging on that place doesn't seem to work anymore. So, oops, crisis of faith. Okay, so now we enter into the 5 of fire. The struggle. Okay, so 5 of fire is the struggle. Okay, the Hierophant's a 5 card, right? So the 5 card is going to relate to all the 5s in the suits. So suffice it to say, 5 of fire, struggle. I'm going to make this super short. 5 of water, broken heart. Spiritual struggle, broken heart. Oh, he betrayed me. She betrayed me. Okay, so all of it leading us into these horrible wounds, right? And then 5 of wind, fear, which is most of us operating on that particular principle. Okay, and then the last, I'm sorry that I made fun of a broken heart. I don't mean to do that. It's the worst of our lives. It's the worst we go through. And I'm very empathetic for all of us going through that. And I've experienced it myself. Okay, so broken heart, broken mind, fear. Fear is like, how does this universe fit together? I don't see it fitting. I'm scared. Okay, and then earth, broken body, you know. Whoa, I just got a letter from the bank and my account's overdrawn. Financial, or house burned down,
Floods. Yeah.
floods, famine, health crisis. All of that is the 5 of earth, right? In the 5 of earth, that's the low point. That's the nadir. That's where we're separated from the place we want to be. Okay, so back to the Hierophant. The Hierophant is one who, I was speaking about death and dismemberment earlier. Okay, so the spirit of the Hierophant has been fed to, in a certain sense, the spiritual struggle. This is the Hierophant in the really exalted space, has experienced the spiritual struggle, has experienced the broken heart, has experienced the fear, and has experienced the breakdown of whatever it is on the physical plane, and has, instead of just trying to restabilize those things, like going back into the 4 energy, the Hierophant has done the deep work of connecting and opening the path, opening the passageways into consciousness, into other worlds. That's and then in that way becomes healed, and then in that way becomes the presider at the sacred mysteries. And potentially the interpreter of things esoteric. There is a role for that, you know. It could be a mediator role, but there is a role for that in our culture. The Hierophant is called the Magus of the Eternal. Okay, so the Magus, you remember the Magus. The Magus is the one who draws down the power, or brings the fire, water, air, and earth together to create something. Okay, so the Magus is dealing with eternal, the Hierophant is dealing with eternal energies. The Magus of the Eternal. Okay. In the deepest way, the Hierophant is our deep intuition. You can follow this, right? It's like tapping the deepest intuition of ourselves to understand depths we could never have imagined before. We learn these lessons and how to move our lives through our intuition. So intuition is something that we apply to ideas that we collect with our reason, and that we build up with our memory and our sensibilities of things that are, and then we move into another level with it and move intuitively from all the knowledge that we have collected. In this place of intuition, we become free from the isolation of division, free from the isolation of class and kind. Okay, remember the Emperor builds up class and kind in some ways because the Emperor is the constituting intelligence. In the Hierophant, we are free from all of that. And to become free from all of that is a different kind of wisdom. It is a really deep wisdom. The Hierophant, I already mentioned this, but is the Hebrew letter is nail. Binding of opposites is what this is about. Binding of opposites and polarized forces. Understanding, quote, heaven and earth, and, quote, heaven on earth, and earth as heaven. Binding it all together. The Hierophant is the link between outer experiences and interior illumination. And then what we learn, this is a quote from Paul Case, who was one of my teachers. In all the universe there is no break. By bonds indissoluble, Each point is fastened to every other. Another note about the Hierophant is if you think in your mind, think of the literal number 5. The way, just imagine what a 5 looks like in your mind. Okay, so a 5 is like a right angle, and under the right angle there is a 3/4 circle. Okay, and so that number 5 is a key. Now imagine it's like a skeleton key that unlocks a door. Okay, and then I want you to imagine the top of it, which is a right angle. Imagine that as being a quarter in a circle cross. Okay, so imagine a circle cross. A circle with divided into 4, spirit, heart, mind, and body. Okay, now imagine the top of the 5 as being the 2 lines. How am I explaining this?
In the middle?
You have a circle, and then you have a cross.
Yep.
And then in the lower right quadrant of the circle, if you could call it a quadrant, you have 2 lines, one going to the center and one going down below, and it makes a right angle. Okay, now imagine another circle under it, and imagine that being a circle cross. And now imagine the lower part of the 5 outlining the outside of the circle going 3/4 of the way around. Does that make sense? 5, it's 2 circle crosses on top of each other, the 5. And the top part of the 5, which is a right angle, moves into the center of the circle, down to the bottom of the circle, and then it circles around 3/4 of the way on the lower circle. Okay? This is the linking of above and below. It's a key. It's the key. So it's another representation of the number 5 as a key. Okay, now let's look at the symbolism on the card. So if I hold up the card, and I'm going to put the overlay on the card, which is the overlay of the Tree of Life. And so you can just see where it is. So do you see anything on the card? Do you note? What do you see on the card? Anything leap out at you?
The moon, the ear.
Oh, the moon, the ear. Okay. So there is the Hierophant is wearing a hearing device. He's listening. Right? Listening is the key, and that's what leaps out at you.
Yeah.
Okay? He is listening. He is listening. Is he listening to the people in front of him? He could be, right? What is that statement, Shelley?
Oh, true intimacy is in the hands of the listener.
True intimacy is in the hands of the listener. Okay, what is the key to healing, do you think? Listening, okay?
Hearing the other person.
Being heard. Being understood, right? That's how we're going to heal. When somebody is able to bear witness to us, then we could heal. Okay, so the Hierophant, who's bearing witness to the Hierophant? Okay, so the Hierophant's definitely listening. Okay, so the Hierophant is listening, you might say, to the guidance received. And then you see the Hierophant transmitting that guidance. Okay, it's interesting that when you line up the chart, his eyes are right on the path of the Empress and the Priestess. They are the crossroads. His right hand is in sphere number 5, Gavura, and I will just point out that his right hand is pointed down to the feminine. She has a moon on her back. Both figures are dressed in feminine attire. The reason for the feminine attire on both figures is it is showing their receptiveness. But there's a male on one side and a female on the other side. So these are the lovers in another variation, so to speak. And so we know the man by the sun, and we know the woman by the moon. But by the way, let's imagine an entire continuum of gender here. The left mudra, the left hand of the Hierophant, points down to the male at the bottom of the pillar. The open male, open by the attire of the open clothing. That's how we know. At the bottom of the pillar. I do want to point out, though, in those hands, you see just about the only tension that you can see in this card is in that left hand, which is pointing explicitly. Okay?
Why 2 fingers?
Because that is a mudra, a specific hand mudra of transmission, transmitting the energy. And it's interesting that he's transmitting the energy down the pillar of mercy in the Tree of Life to the male. So I just want to point out something else about this. My mom painted this card. Okay. And last week I told her I was in the Hierophant. I've been in the Hierophant energy for a while here. And I said, I'm in the Hierophant. And she said, oh, all that is the right brain, left brain. That's all it is. It's just transmitting the energy to the right brain, left brain. I said, Mom, I'll bet you anything I could turn that into 1 hour, a whole hour, talking about what the Hierophant is. It's all it is right brain, left brain. Okay, so the feminine is representing the right brain. The masculine is representing the left brain. All right? This is according to my mom. And my mom knows. Okay, so I think it's interesting that the mudra of transmission is pointed to the left brain. The right brain's okay. So the left brain needs to get lined up here and figured out, and it happens to be at the bottom of the pillar of mercy. So what we have is this energy, this flooding through this pillar of mercy. And it's flooded toward the left brain. Okay, so that's part of what we see. And then, here's another one that you all pointed out to me. I just want to point out on this card, which is similar to what we've seen before, that the genitalia, you might say, of the Hierophant, where that would be, is right in the middle of sphere 6, which is enlightened consciousness. So I think that is interesting. And then I'm going to share another secret of this card, and you can tell me what other things you see on this card. This Hierophant is actually, and this is according to my mom, she painted the card, female. She says that it's female. Okay, so why is she female? Okay, that again has to do with receptivity, Kabbalah. Opening to receive, to receive, to receive. Does she have a womb? We don't know for sure.
So
we don't know, but she's feminine.
I experience her face as female,
Uh-huh.
but I really experience those hands and feet as male.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be, or maybe I read it as like receiving, the receptivity is female, but the manifesting.
Very good. That's really good. Okay, so again, I mean, really, this is, I think the point would be it's an androgynous figure, right. But this is usually depicted as a male.
Right. Yeah.
There's no tarot deck I've ever seen where the Hierophant's female, and the only people who are ever going to think this is female is anybody who happens to hear what I'm saying right now. Otherwise, the Hierophant's male. And the Hierophant is male in the descriptions of the card in Tarot of the Spirit and everything else. I'm telling you a secret right now.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so there's a feminine energy there. And yes, there are masculine looking aspects to it as well. Okay, what else do we see on the card? We see the X's. Those always leap out at me, and they're always mysterious. And every time I look at those 3 X's, my feeling about it begins to shift. But right now, I'm looking at it as all the opposites combined and moving, and the linking together of all opposites above and below, inner and outer, and so on. Okay, and then to point out the checkerboard floor, So in this case, so we know that the checkerboard floor represents all pairs of opposites, and we've seen the checkerboard floor as horizontal in some of the cards. In this case, it turns into diamonds, right? We've seen it as squares, and here it turns into diamonds. What that shows is all the energy is moving now, and there's the stream of consciousness that runs through this, and the Hierophant has his feet on the stream of consciousness. Okay. Let's see what else. Is there anything else that you know?
Well, you have the pillars.
Oh yeah, the pillars. Okay, so the pillars, pillar of mercy, pillar of judgment, that is the outline of the background of the tree of life with the pillars on each side. The Hierophant on the picture, and the picture is actually sitting right in the middle, which is the central pillar of the tree of life, completely balanced in all ways. But really the Hierophant on the tree of life appears between the number 2 and the number 4, which is on the pillar of mercy. So you have to have, in order to understand this, so I'm saying this for people who don't know what I'm talking about, you need to do a little background research on what the tree of life is if these words don't make sense. And that can be done by looking at Tarot of the Spirit, the book, or Kabbalah and Tarot of the Spirit, and you will see the outline of the tree of life that all of these cards are painted on. Okay, and then you'll see the meaning of the tree of life, and you can also see then where the 2s fit, where the 4s fit, and so on. Because right now, the way I'm presenting the Hierophant is pretty high level, and it actually requires a lot of background knowledge and information.
What about the heart space being in Doth?
Oh, so what about the heart space being in Doth? Exactly. Boy, that is really exactly the case. That okay, so Dot, it's actually called Dot. So Dot is the secret sphere, the sphere of secret knowledge right in the middle of the abyss. And that's the place we have to journey into whenever we're in those 5 energies. The way out of those 5 energies is going to be a journey into the unknown that we can only take alone. And that if we're willing to face it and to go into it and to go deeply into it and to immerse ourselves, to submerge, that's when we may begin into that deep, silent, dark space. I'm going to make it dark right now because it's the unknown, right? That is where we may begin to hear that very teeny, tiny, still voice in the silence. You know, the little voice that begins to speak to us. And then to listen to that and to begin to move with those energies.
The golden thread.
That, like the golden thread, that's where we may encounter the golden thread that's going to help us move through and move out.
So what I'm noticing is the 2 Taurus symbols.
Okay, so the Taurus symbol means that's the astrological symbol for the Hierophant, and in the picture that is showing at the top of each pillar in the particular picture of the depiction of the Hierophant. Okay, so Taurus is earth. Okay, so the Hierophant is the channel of all this spiritual energy, and you could call it down the pillars to earth. Okay, so it's kind of like us calling. Really, there's no up and down. So when I use these kinds of words, like we're bringing down energy, we could just as easily say we're bringing up energy, but it's a different layer of consciousness. And we're bringing it to earth, or the Hierophant is bringing it to the plane of manifestation.
Well, you could say the lesson is on the physical plane. Right?
You could say the lesson is on the physical plane, right? And we could say the lesson is on the physical plane.
It's not, right.
And we could say, oh, okay, well, is also the lesson happening on other than the physical plane? And we could say, maybe, maybe so, right? Okay, is the entire universe being changed by this experience? Is the whole thing a hologram? That's why words start failing, and then that's why I can't talk anymore. Because it gets really complex. So...
Oh, before you go on, I've been dying to know. Her skirt, isn't that the Akashic Records that was
Oh,
on the altars
that okay.
and
So
the other ones?
right, and so Cynthia says her skirt. Okay, so now we get into the pronoun. Now we're getting into the pronoun problem. Are we going to say him or her? Okay, so and what's the other is the skirt?
The skirt.
Is the skirt, and that undergarment? It's the undergarment. Okay, and is the undergarment connected to the Akashic Records? Yes, it is. Okay, because we see the pattern of that underdress or whatever it is appearing in the High Priestess, the scroll of the High Priestess. We see it repeated throughout. It's in the chariot too, and wherever we see it, it is going to designate the immersion in, or whatever you want to call it, the Akasha, and then potentially the Akashic Records. Yeah. And so the Akashic Records is something like being able to read past, present, and future.
Why is it the undergarment?
Because it's closest to the skin. The outer garment is red, which is connected with Mars, and but that's outside, but the inner is like a real reaching into that deep inner space. And the red on the outside indicates a willingness to go forward and to do that. Another thing I'm noticing, by the way, is the head is cocked on the Hierophant, and I don't think I mentioned that before, but that goes back to the listening, listening. The cocked and listening, that is a receptive attitude, right? A very receptive attitude. Okay, so in general, the Hierophant brings higher ideas, in quote, higher ideas into lower organisms. The Hierophant is an initiator, awakens the imagination. Now I'm going back down to the more, what do we call it? More mundane aspects of the Hierophant. Awakens imagination. It's a recognition of ourself as teacher, as healer, as creator. The Hierophant is the revealer of all mysteries, the initiate who receives the voice, whether willingly or unwillingly. And sometimes it comes unwillingly, and we get moved into ways that are uncomfortable, really uncomfortable. The whole of it, or the idea, is to educate, to help educate. It's a spiritual teacher, a spiritual educator. Do you know the word educate? I love this. You probably know this. The word educate means to draw out. So if you put that together with healing, and with the power of healing being listening, and you think of education as to draw out, that's going to be the deepest kind of education. The kind of education that the teacher helps draw out, so that the student then it becomes unassailable for the student, because that's the student, or the patience maybe, deepest self that now comes out onto the surface, comes up to the surface, so the student can see it. This is what really is going on inside myself. You have witnessed it. You have mirrored it back to me, right? You, the teacher. Okay, so to educate is to draw out.
So if he's under the 5, would you say that he is helping to facilitate change, movement, a shift? There's something happening at the 5, right?
There is something happening at the 5. Healing is happening at the 5.
Oh, it's a healing.
The Hierophant illuminates sacred realities and teaches the hidden laws, and then things start to shift. So now, since you asked, well, what's going on here? I want to pull up, I want to see if I can find the Hierophant in the Tarot of the Spirit, and I want to read you something. I'm almost there. Here it is. Here's the Hierophant. The Hierophant, the Hierophant is the revelation of the inner voice, the flash of insight that comes when least expected. The Hierophant could be looked at as something like the birth of Christ consciousness. But when I say Christ consciousness, here's where language fails. I'm talking about the Christed consciousness and the Christed ones as messengers. Christ consciousness, the consciousness of a messenger. The message is going to come through. The channel. Okay? The birth of Christ consciousness can be looked at figuratively or literally. That's what's happening here. It's called the birth of Christ consciousness. And I hesitate to use the word Christ because of all the cultural overlays associated with that. Okay. The Hierophant as the great macrocosmic force coming to Earth, here's another level of it, is said to move in cycles of 2,000 years. This means that Earth is due for a new Messiah. This is part of the Hierophant. The new Messiah is the harbinger of a new level of consciousness. During this phase of the 2,000-year cycle, however, there is not one Messiah, but a multitude. A whole generation, and generation means all those born, the cohort is all those at the same time, all those who are alive. I'm using it in a larger sense than just the generation X or millennials or whatever. The whole generation, this is all that is generated on the planet now. A whole generation is rising up and embracing the female aspects of the Godhead. Everything is getting rebalanced. A generation is rising up in defense of the Mother Earth and beginning to raise the vibrational level of the planet to receive the clear communications from the source to which we shall all return. The field. The field. Even as you read this, you are being called as one of this multitude. You must realize this. You are a harbinger of the new consciousness. That is the Hierophant. And I'm going to bring this to an end now by just saying that the Hierophant is a healer. And I will end with, I'm going to pull up Kabbalah and Tarot of the Spirit and find the Hierophant. And I'm going to end by sharing with you the 4 colors associated, 4 meditational colors associated with the Hierophant, so that you can meditate on these colors and go deeper into this energy. You can pick red, orange if it's too much to think about all of the colors. But here are the colors. Red, orange, deep indigo. Okay, so that outer garment is like a deep kind of red-orange, very deep red, right? Deep indigo, so that's the color of the cosmos, right? Deep indigo, the universe. Deep warm olive and rich brown. Those are the colors of the earth. Warm olive and deep brown. Red, orange, deep indigo, deep warm olive and rich brown. Here is the affirmation associated with the Hierophant. I receive and transmit the living light. Original compassion prevails within and all around me. Triumphant eternal intelligence prevails within and all around me. I enter the ministry of healing. And that is where we are going to end today. Does not end our sojourn into the Western Mystery School, but that is where we are going to end today. Hierophant means sacred appearance.